The first time Hannah Miller realized Matteo Russo had been watching her, Boston was buried under 18 inches of snow. The diner lights were flickering like they were afraid to stay alive, and 3 men in black overcoats had just walked in calling her by a name she had never heard before. "The last heir," one of them said. Hannah stood behind the counter with a spatula in one hand and a coffee pot in the other, steam rising around her face, the smell of burnt sugar and old frying oil clinging to her apron. Snow beat against the windows so hard the whole diner seemed to breathe with it. She had worked the graveyard shift at Miller's Diner for 6 years. She knew the rhythm of tired truckers, drunk college boys, lonely nurses, and rich men who came in after charity galas pretending they were too important to read the menu. She knew how to disappear in plain sight. Smile, refill coffee, flip eggs, take the insult, pocket the tip, keep moving. But no one had ever walked into her diner at 2 in the morning and looked at her like she was worth killing for. The 3 men spread out near the entrance. Their shoes were too expensive for the salt-stained floor. Their gloves were black leather. Their silence was organized. One of the regulars lowered his fork. The waitress on duty, Marcy, froze beside the pie case. And in the back booth, where a man in a black suit had been sitting alone for the last 42 minutes, Matteo Russo slowly lifted his eyes. Hannah knew his name because everyone in Boston knew his name. You did not have to be part of the underworld to understand that some men were storms wearing tailored wool. Matteo Russo owned restaurants that never seemed full, warehouses no one entered after dark, and half the waterfront through companies with polite names and dirty histories. He had started coming to Miller's Diner 3 months ago, always after midnight, always alone, always in a black suit, even when the snow piled higher than the windows. He ordered the same thing every time. Her father's dish, eggs over easy, toast burnt at the edges, hash browns with extra black pepper. No one ordered it that way anymore. No one except Thomas Miller, her father, who had vanished on a winter night 12 years ago and left behind a diner, a locked recipe box, and a daughter who still heard his laugh when the grill hissed. The first night Matteo ordered it, Hannah nearly dropped the plate. Now, with 3 strangers staring at her like she belonged to them, Matteo set down his coffee cup. The small sound of porcelain against the table cut through the diner like a blade. The oldest man near the door smiled at Hannah. "Come with us, Miss Valenti." Hannah's stomach tightened. "My name is Miller." "Not by blood," Marcy whispered. "Hannah." Hannah did not move. She had spent her whole life being told that women like her should make themselves smaller. Take up less space. Want less. Demand less. But fear had never made her shrink. It made her go very still. "I don't know who you are," she said, "but you need to leave." The man smiled wider. "That courage belongs to your mother." Hannah's grip tightened around the coffee pot. In the booth, Matteo stood. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply rose to his full height, buttoned his jacket, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "She said leave," Matteo said. The men at the door turned toward him. For the first time, Hannah saw fear pass across their faces. Not panic, not surprise. Recognition. "Russo," the oldest man said carefully. "This is family business." Matteo stepped out of the booth. "Then you should have handled it before you walked into my city." "Your city?" the man asked. Matteo's eyes did not blink. "Yes." The word landed like a verdict. Hannah should have been relieved. Instead, something colder moved through her. Because Matteo Russo had not sounded like a stranger, defending a woman in trouble. He had sounded like a man whose patience had finally ended. The oldest man looked past him, back to Hannah. "Ask yourself why he is here, Miss Miller. Ask yourself why a man like Matteo Russo knows what your father used to eat." The coffee pot slipped from Hannah's hand and shattered against the floor. Hot coffee spread across the white tile like a dark stain. Matteo's jaw flexed once. The 3 men reached inside their coats. The lights went out. Hannah heard Marcy scream. A chair crashed. The front window exploded inward with a burst of snow and glass. Strong arms caught Hannah around the waist and pulled her down behind the counter before she could even breathe. Matteo's body covered hers in the dark. He smelled like winter, smoke, and expensive fabric. "Stay down," he said against her ear. His voice was calm, too calm. Hannah's heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. Outside, engines roared. Black SUVs slid to a stop across the snowy street, headlights flooding the diner through broken glass. Men shouted in Italian. Someone slammed into the counter. A body hit the floor. No screams after that, only the terrible rhythm of powerful men moving with purpose. Hannah tried to shove Matteo off her. Marcy. She's behind the pie case. She's alive. How do you know? His silence answered before he did. Because he knew where everyone was. Because he had been watching. The emergency lights flickered on, painting the diner red. Matteo rose first, then reached down for her. Hannah stared at his hand. Large, steady, bloodless. She hated that she wanted to take it. She hated more that she did. When he pulled her up, the diner was a ruin of broken glass and snow. The 3 men who had entered were gone. Dragged out or driven away. Matteo's men stood in the room now, silent and armed beneath their coats, their eyes lowered whenever Matteo looked their way. Marcy sobbed near the pie case. The regulars were frozen in their booths, and every person in the diner stared at Hannah as if she had become dangerous by association. Matteo turned to one of his men. Get everyone home, pay them triple, repair the windows before sunrise. Then he looked at Hannah. You're coming with me. The old Hannah might have laughed. The tired Hannah might have cursed. The woman everyone ignored might have said yes, because fear was easier than argument. But Hannah Miller had burned her hands on grills, buried her father without a body, paid overdue bills with tips and pride, and learned how to survive men who thought volume was power. No, she said. A muscle moved in Matteo's cheek. His men looked stunned, as if no one in Boston had ever told him that word and lived comfortably afterward. Matteo stepped closer. Snow melted on his shoulders. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and fixed entirely on her. Hannah. Her name sounded different in his mouth. Not soft, not sweet. Possessive in a way that made her pulse betray her. You don't get to walk into my diner for 3 months, order my father's breakfast, scare off strangers, and then command me like I'm luggage. The diner went silent. Matteo's gaze dropped briefly to her shaking hands, then returned to her face. I am not trying to command you. Then what do you call it? Keeping you alive. The words were quiet, but something in them shook her more than the broken window. Hannah folded her arms over her chest, suddenly aware of the flour on her apron, the curve of her hips, the sweat at her hairline, the way every glamorous crime drama forgot women like her existed, unless they needed someone to cry in the background. Matteo did not look through her. That was the most dangerous thing about him. He looked at her like every inch of her mattered. You knew this was coming, she said. His silence was almost an apology. Almost. Hannah's throat tightened. How long have you been watching me? Matteo's eyes flickered. Long enough. She stepped back as if he had touched her. No. Hannah. No. You don't get to make that sound like protection. Before he could answer, the oldest man from the doorway appeared outside the broken window, standing across the snowy street beside a black Mercedes. His face was cut by the shadows of falling snow. He raised one hand, not in surrender, but in promise. Then the Mercedes pulled away into the storm. Matteo's expression changed. Not anger. Fear. It was gone so quickly, Hannah almost missed it. But she had spent her life reading silence. She knew what it looked like when someone heard the name of death without anyone saying it. Who is he? She asked. Matteo looked at the empty street. Vincent Caruso. Marcy whispered from behind them. Oh God. Hannah turned. You know him? Marcy's face had gone pale. Everyone knows him, honey. Matteo's eyes stayed on Hannah. He does not leave empty. Handed twice. Hannah should have asked more. She should have demanded the police. Explanations. Records. Something normal people used when their lives cracked open. Instead, all she could think was that Matteo Russo, the coldest man in Boston, had looked afraid only when another man looked at her. Outside the diner, his SUV waited with the back door open. Hannah looked at it, then at the broken glass scattered across the floor of the only home her father had left her. I'm not yours, she said. Matteo's eyes sharpened. No, he replied. You're not. A beat of silence passed between them. Then he added, that is why this is going to hurt. She did not understand until 2 hours later, when she stood inside Matteo Russo's penthouse above Boston Harbor and saw her own life covering the walls. Not photographs. Files. Her diner schedule. Her bank records. Her father's missing person report. Her apartment lease. Her mother's death certificate, which Hannah had never seen because she had been told her mother died when she was too young to remember. There were maps with red markings around the diner, her apartment, the cemetery, where she left flowers for a man with no grave. And on the largest table, under a glass weight, sat a photograph of Hannah, taken through the diner window. She was laughing in the picture, head tilted back, flower on her cheek, one hand on her hip. She did not remember the moment. She barely recognized the woman in it. She looked alive. Matteo stood near the windows with his hands in his pockets, the city glowing beneath him like something he owned but did not love. Hannah turned slowly. "You had a file on me." "Yes. How comforting. At least you're honest about being terrifying." "I did not build the file." She stared at him. His voice lowered. "Your father did." The room seemed to tilt. "No." Matteo crossed to the table but stopped before he got too close to her, as if he understood that one more step would make her run. "He knew Caruso would come for you one day. My father cooked eggs and fixed broken toasters. Your father laundered money for the Valenti family before he disappeared." The words should have sounded absurd. Instead, they slid into old memories Hannah had never understood. Her father locking the basement door whenever strangers came. Her father burning papers in the alley behind the diner. Her father teaching her to count exits before he taught her to drive. "You're lying." "I wish I were." Hannah laughed once, sharply. "Do you?" "Because you look pretty comfortable ruining my life." Matteo's eyes darkened. "You think this is what I wanted?" "I don't know what you want." The answer came too quickly. "You alive." The room changed around that sentence. Hannah looked away first. Outside, snow moved across the glass like ash. Matteo picked up a small metal recipe box from the table. It was dented, blue, and painfully familiar. Hannah forgot how to breathe. That was in the diner. It was behind the flower bins. Her voice broke. "You searched my kitchen?" "After the first threat." "The first threat?" she repeated. Matteo looked at her, and the mask cracked just enough for her to see the exhaustion beneath it. "There have been 7. The floor seemed to fall away. Hannah thought of the car that had idled outside her apartment last week. The phone calls with no voice on the other end. The man who had asked too many questions about the diner's basement. The envelope she found taped under table 7 and threw away because it was empty. 7 threats. And Matteo had been there. She hated him for it. She hated herself for the relief that followed. "What is in the box?" she asked. Matteo slid it toward her. "Recipes." "That's it?" "Your father hid information in them. Codes, dates, names." Hannah looked down at the box. Her father's handwriting was still taped across the lid. For Hannah, when the snow comes back. Her eyes burned. All these years, she had thought grief was a closed room. Now Matteo had opened a door inside it. And there was blood on the floor. "I want to go home," she said. "You can't." Her head snapped up. Matteo's face was controlled, but his eyes were not. "Caruso knows you have the box now." "I don't have anything." "You do." "He doesn't care." "Then give it to him." "No." "Why?" "Because after he reads it, he will kill you anyway." The quiet certainty of his words chilled her. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself. "So what? I stay here? In your glass tower? Under your cameras? With men outside every door?" Matteo did not answer. "That's not protection," she whispered. "That's another kind of cage." Something moved across his face. For a second, she thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, "I know." The honesty disarmed her more than denial would have. A knock came at the door. One of Matteo's men entered, tall and silver-haired. "Boss, Caruso's people are outside Miss Miller's apartment." Hannah went cold. "What?" "They arrived 8 minutes ago," the man said. "No entry yet." Hannah turned on Matteo. "My apartment? Marcy has a spare key. My neighbor's kid sometimes feeds my cat." Matteo looked at the man. "Get them out." Already moving. Hannah grabbed her coat from the chair. "I'm going." "No. My cat is there. Hannah. My father's letters are there. My mother's necklace is there. My life is there. And Caruso's men are there." She stepped close to him then. Close enough to see the faint scar along his jaw. Close enough to feel the force of him. "You don't get to tell me my life is collateral damage." His eyes dropped to her mouth for half a second. The air tightened. He stepped back first. Not because he was afraid of her. Because he was afraid of what he might do if he did not. "You have 10 minutes, he said. "You do exactly what I tell you." "I don't take orders well." His mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Something darker. I noticed. The ride to her apartment was silent except for tires crushing snow. Boston slid past in blue-white streaks, old brick buildings and frozen sidewalks, churches with dark windows, alleys full of secrets. Hannah sat beside Matteo in the back seat, the recipe box on her lap, his men in the SUV, ahead, and behind them. She watched his reflection in the window. He did not look at his phone. He did not fidget. He did not ask if she was scared. That should have made him seem cold. Instead, she understood suddenly that he was listening to everything. The speed of the cars, the wind, the radio static from the driver, her breathing. He was a man built by danger. At her apartment building, black SUVs blocked both ends of the street. Matteo got out first. His men moved with him, shadows against snow. Hannah stepped onto the sidewalk and looked up at her third-floor windows. Her curtains moved. A hand closed gently around her wrist. Not hard. Enough. Matteo leaned close. Behind me. She wanted to argue. Then the downstairs door opened, and a man she did not know came out wearing her father's old wool scarf. Hannah stopped breathing. The scarf was gray, frayed at the edge, the only thing of Thomas Miller's she wore when grief got too heavy. The stranger smiled. Matteo moved in front of her so fast, she barely saw it. The street erupted into motion. Men surged from the SUVs. The stranger reached inside his coat. Matteo slammed him against the brick wall before the man could finish the movement. Hannah flinched at the sound. The stranger dropped to the snow, gasping, while Matteo crouched and pulled the scarf free, with a tenderness that looked almost violent on him. He turned back to Hannah. For one terrible second, she thought he would hand it to her. Instead, he held it in his fist, eyes burning. "Who gave you this?" he asked the man. The man laughed through his pain. "Caruso sends his regards." Matteo's expression emptied. That was worse than anger. He stood. Hannah caught his sleeve before he could move. "Don't." He looked down at her hand on his arm. The men around them went still. Hannah realized no one touched Matteo Russo without permission. She let go too late. His eyes rose to hers, unreadable. "I need answers," she said, "not bodies." A muscle jumped in his jaw. For a long moment, the snow fell between them. Then he looked to his men. "Take him, alive." The order surprised everyone, including Hannah. Matteo handed her the scarf. Their fingers brushed. Cold through cold. She took it like a wound. Inside her apartment, nothing was stolen. That was the horror of it. Her drawers were open. Her closet searched. Her father's letters spread across the floor. Her mother's necklace had been placed carefully on her pillow, the thin gold chain arranged in the shape of a circle. A message. Hannah stood in the doorway of her bedroom, unable to move. Matteo remained behind her, close enough to catch her if she fell, but not close enough to claim the right. "They were looking for something," he said. "My life," she whispered. "They were looking through my life." He said nothing. She picked up one of her father's letters. It was dated 8 months before he vanished. "My Hannah, if a man ever orders my breakfast and looks at you like he owes me a debt, do not trust him quickly. But do not dismiss him either. Some boys grow into monsters because no one protected them when they were still human." Her hands shook. Matteo's reflection appeared in the dark bedroom window. Hannah turned slowly. His face had changed. "You knew him," she said. Matteo was silent. "My father knew you." The silence deepened. "When?" she asked. He looked at the letter in her hand, then at the floor. "I was 14. The apartment felt suddenly smaller. My father saved you." Matteo's voice was flat. "Yes." From anyone else, it would have been a confession. From Matteo, it sounded like a wound he had stitched shut too many times. "What happened?" His eyes lifted. "Not here." "Matteo." It was the first time she said his name. He looked like it hurt. Then he told her. "Not everything. Just enough. A boy running through winter without shoes. A debt collector with a blade. A back alley behind Miller's diner. Thomas Miller opening the kitchen door and pulling the boy inside. Hot soup. A blanket. A warning. A lie told to dangerous men. He hid me for 3 nights, Matteo said. Then he gave me enough money to leave Boston." Hannah sat on the edge of the bed. Her father had saved him. Her father, who brought home broken radios and stray cats, and once drove 40 minutes in a snowstorm because Hannah had said she wanted cinnamon apples. Her father had hidden a future mafia boss in their diner kitchen. "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered. "Because he wanted you clean of it." A bitter laugh escaped her. "That worked out beautifully." Matteo flinched. Barely, but she saw it. There was a knock at the apartment door. Matteo's silver-haired man appeared. "Boss, Caruso invited you to dinner." Hannah laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. Of course he did. The man's eyes moved to her. Both of you. Matteo's answer was immediate. No. Hannah stood. Yes. He turned to her. No, he repeated lower. You said I need answers. Not from him. Especially from him. Hannah. Men like Caruso do not invite women to dinner. They set tables for sacrifices. Then maybe he should meet a woman who refuses to lie down on the plate. Matteo's star sharpened. There it was again. That flicker of fascination he kept trying to bury. He admired her courage. He feared it. He wanted to protect it and punish the world for making it necessary. You will not use yourself as bait, he said. I'm not asking permission. His men looked at the floor. Hannah stepped closer, her voice softer. You've been making decisions about my life for months. Watching. Intervening. Deciding what I should know. I. Han. His silence admitted it. If you want me to trust you, she said, start by standing beside me instead of in front of me. Matteo looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, standing beside you will not stop me from killing anyone who reaches for you. She should have been horrified. Instead, her pulse climbed. That's something you should probably work on. His eyes lowered briefly. I am trying. Dinner was held at a private club in Beacon Hill, where the chandeliers were older than most American fortunes, and the men wore their sins beneath tailored jackets. Hannah arrived in a deep green dress Matteo had sent up to the penthouse, without asking her size out loud. It fit perfectly. That unsettled her more than if it had not. She looked at herself in the mirror before they left, fingers smoothing the fabric over her curves. She expected to feel exposed. Instead, she felt furious. Beautiful, yes, but mostly furious. Matteo waited by the elevator in black. When he saw her, the mask slipped. Only for a second. Only enough. Hannah's breath caught. He did not compliment her. That would have been too easy. Too normal. Too safe. He simply said, we do not stay longer than 20 minutes. She lifted her chin. 30. 15. 25. His mouth almost softened again. You negotiate like your father. Pain and warmth struck at the same time. She looked away first. At the club, every conversation died when she walked in with Matteo Russo's hand resting at the small of her back. Not gripping. Not pushing. A warning to the room. Vincent Caruso stood at the far end near a fireplace, silver-haired, elegant, smiling like a man who had never needed to raise his voice because other people screamed for him. Miss Miller, he said. Or should I say Miss Valenti? Hannah walked toward him before Matteo could stop her. The room watched her body. Her dress. Her confidence. Her nerve. She could feel the old familiar calculation in their eyes. The disbelief that someone like her had entered a room like this and failed to apologize for taking up space. Then she felt Matteo behind her, and the air changed. Every man who looked too long looked away. Caruso noticed. His smile thinned. Thomas raised you with spirit, he said. You knew my father. I owned your father. Matteo's hand flexed at his side. Hannah did not blink. That must have disappointed him. A few men shifted. Caruso laughed softly. You have no idea what you inherited. A diner with bad plumbing? Blood, Caruso said. A name, a harbor charter, a ledger that belongs to me. Matteo stepped forward. It never belonged to you. Caruso looked amused. Russo. Still pretending this is about honor? Matteo's voice was calm. No. No? It is about her. The room went silent. Hannah felt the words move through her like heat under ice. Caruso's gaze sharpened. Dangerous thing, letting a woman become your reason. Matteo looked at him with dead calm. She is not my reason. Hannah's chest tightened before she could stop it. Then Matteo added, she is the line. No one moved. Even Caruso stopped smiling. Hannah stared straight ahead, but every nerve in her body turned toward Matteo. The line. Not property. Not weakness. The place where he stopped being civilized. Caruso lifted a glass of red wine. Then let us test the line. The doors opened. A young man was dragged into the room by 2 guards. He had a bruised face, frightened eyes, and an apron from Miller's diner. Hannah's heart stopped. Eli, she whispered. Eli was 19, a dishwasher who worked weekends, and sent half his paycheck home to his mother in Dorchester. Caruso smiled. He was found carrying messages from your diner to Russo's men. Hannah turned to Matteo. His face had gone cold, but she saw the flash of surprise. Eli looked at her, terrified. Hannah, I'm sorry. They said they'd hurt my mom. I didn't know what was in them. Betrayal should have felt clean. Sharp. Instead, it felt human. Messy. Desperate. Caruso watched her. Tell me where the ledger is, and the boy walks out. Hannah's mouth went dry. Matteo said, he walks out now. Caruso tilted his head. Or? Matteo moved before anyone could blink. 1 second he was beside Hannah. The next he had Caruso's closest guard pinned against the dining table. A knife from the place setting pressed to the man's throat. The room erupted. Chairs. Scraped. Men reached inside coats. Matteo did not raise his voice. If the boy bleeds, he said, everyone you love learns fear tonight. Hannah stared at him. This was the violence people whispered about. Not chaos. Not rage. Precision. A controlled darkness, waiting for permission. And still, his eyes flicked to Hannah, checking, as if her face could call him back. She stepped toward Eli. Let him go. Caruso studied Matteo, then Hannah. Something like realization crossed his face. You really don't know, he said to her. Know what? Caruso reached into his jacket and took out a folded photograph. Matteo's expression changed. Don't, he said. Caruso handed the photo to Hannah anyway. It showed her father standing outside Miller's diner 12 years ago, younger and thinner, beside a woman Hannah did not recognize. The woman had Hannah's eyes. In her arms was a little girl with dark curls. On the back, written in her father's handwriting, were 4 words. Protect them both. Hannah looked up slowly. Them both? She whispered. Caruso smiled. Your mother did not die when you were a child, Hannah. The room disappeared. Matteo's voice came from far away. Caruso. She ran. Caruso continued. And she took something that belonged to my family. Hannah's fingers crushed the photograph. My mother is alive? Caruso's smile turned cruel. For now. Matteo released the guard and turned fully toward Caruso. The violence in him filled the room like smoke. Hannah stepped between them, not because she trusted Caruso, because if Matteo moved now, there would be no coming back. Where is she? Hannah asked. Caruso looked at her with triumph. The ledger first. Matteo's hand closed around Hannah's wrist, gentle but urgent. We're leaving. This time, she did not argue. They left with Eli alive, but the night broke something between them. In the SUV, Hannah sat as far from Matteo as the seat allowed, the photograph clutched in her hand. You knew, she said. Matteo looked out the window. Not that she was alive, but you knew there was something about my mother. Yes. The honesty landed like betrayal. Hannah closed her eyes. All the protection. All the quiet watchfulness. All the moments when he had looked at her like he was carrying a grief that belonged to her. You should have told me. I was trying to confirm it. No, you were trying to control it. He turned then. Yes. She looked at him, stunned by the admission. His voice was rougher now. Because every truth around you has teeth. Because everyone who knows your bloodline either wants to use you or bury you. Because the first time I saw you through that diner window, laughing with flour on your face, I understood your father's last request in a way I did not want to. Anger faltered. Matteo leaned closer, but stopped before touching her. I have protected politicians, criminals, cowards, and kings of small rotten empires. I have never been afraid to lose any of them. His eyes held hers. You terrify me. The words were not romantic. They were too raw for that. Hannah swallowed. Don't say things like that after lying to me. His face closed. You're right. That hurt more than an argument. At the penthouse, Hannah locked herself in the guest bedroom. Matteo did not knock. He did not order her out. He placed the recipe box outside her door and left. That made her angrier, then lonelier. At dawn, she opened the door and found him asleep in a chair across the hall. Not in his room. Not comfortably. There, between her and the elevator. His head rested against the wall. His suit jacket was gone. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms. For the first time, he looked less like a king and more like a man who had forgotten how to rest years ago. Hannah stood over him with the recipe box in her hands. Matteo, His eyes opened instantly. No confusion, no softness. Ready for war. Then he saw her, and something in him eased by a fraction. "You slept outside my door," she said. "Yes. Because you don't trust your own security? Because I don't trust myself not to notice too late." The answer was so quietly broken, she had no defense against it. Hannah sat on the floor across from him, the recipe box between them. "I'm still angry. You should be. I don't forgive you. I know. But I need my mother." Matteo sat forward. The hall was dim, lit by the gray morning pressing against the windows. "My father hid the ledger in the recipes," Hannah said. "You said it was coded." "Yes. I know his recipes better than anyone alive." Matteo's eyes sharpened. She opened the box. For hours, they worked on the floor outside the bedroom like two people building a bridge out of grief. Hannah read measurements. Matteo matched dates. Flour became freight routes. Sugar became shell companies. Pepper meant police. Burnt toast meant betrayal. Her father had hidden an empire inside breakfast. By noon, they found a pattern. Every recipe referenced a location on the Boston waterfront. One appeared again and again. Bale 19. Hannah knew it. An abandoned seafood warehouse near the harbor, half collapsed, coated in salt and fog. Matteo stood. "That's where he hid it." "And where Caruso has my mother?" "Maybe. I'm going." "No." She looked up at him. The old fight rose automatically between them, but this time Matteo looked away first. His hand curled, then opened. "I cannot think clearly when you are in danger," he said. The admission stripped the room bare. Hannah rose slowly. "Then learn." His gaze returned to hers. She stepped closer. "Because I am not going to survive this, by being locked in beautiful rooms, while men trade secrets over my head." "I know." "Do you?" His eyes dropped to the space between them. Then he reached into his pocket and took out a small velvet box. For one wild second, Hannah thought it was a ring. It was not. Inside was her father's old diner key. "I had it taken from your apartment before Caruso's men could find it," Matteo said. "I should have given it to you immediately." He placed it in her palm. The metal was warm from his hand. "You lead," he said. "I follow close enough to stop the bullet." Hannah's chest tightened. "That is still very controlling." "Yes. At least you're self-aware." For the first time, Matteo Russo almost smiled. Almost. That afternoon, the city learned Hannah Miller existed. It happened by design. Matteo took her to the charity gala at the Boston Public Library, a glittering event full of old money, political smiles, and men who had spent decades pretending organized crime was something that happened in movies, not in their private dining rooms. Hannah walked in wearing the green dress again beneath Matteo's black coat. Cameras flashed. Reporters turned. Conversations stopped. "Why are we here?" she asked under her breath. "Caruso moves in shadows," Matteo said. "So we take you into the light." "As what?" His pause was almost imperceptible. "My fiancé." Hannah stopped walking. "What?" "It is the fastest way to make any move against you a public declaration of war. You could have mentioned that before the cameras. I thought you might refuse." "I would have." "Yes." She stared at him. "You are impossible." His eyes moved over her face. "So are you." The cameras caught that. By midnight, every gossip account in Boston had posted the same headline. Matteo Russo engaged to mystery diner cook. The comments came fast. Cruel, confused, fascinated. Who is she? Why her? He could have anyone. She must know something. Hannah read none of them. Matteo made sure of it, though she knew enough about the world to know what it said about women like her when powerful men chose them. Surprise was always insult wearing perfume. Inside the gala, an old banker with a red face looked her up and down and said, "Russo always did enjoy strange investments." Matteo went still. Hannah placed a hand on his arm before he could respond. Then she smiled at the banker. "Funny," she said. "I was just thinking the same thing about your wife." The man's smile collapsed. Someone coughed into champagne. Matteo looked down at Hannah, and this time he did smile. Not kindly, proudly. The dangerous warmth of it followed her all the way to the balcony, where snow drifted over stone railings and the city glowed below. For one quiet moment, they were alone. Hannah leaned against the railing. "You enjoyed that too much." "I enjoyed him realizing you were sharper than he was." "He'll recover." "Not socially." She laughed before she could stop herself. Matteo looked at her like the sound had done something devastating to him. The laughter faded. Snow caught in her hair. He lifted his hand, as if to brush it away, then stopped. The restraint between them became its own kind of touch. Hannah's pulse slowed, then deepened. "You always stop," she said quietly. His hand lowered. "I should." "Why?" "Because if I touch you before you trust me, I am no better than the men trying to own you." Her heart ached. "I don't know how to trust you." "I know, but sometimes I do anyway." His eyes closed briefly, as if that hurt worse. Inside the ballroom, applause began for some speech neither of them heard. Matteo opened his eyes. Hannah. Her name was different this time. Not possession. Not warning. Need. Before he could say more, glass shattered behind them. A shot cracked through the night. Matteo grabbed Hannah and pulled her down, his body shielding hers as screams tore through the ballroom. Men rushed the balcony. Cameras fell. Champagne spilled. Another shot struck the stone railing inches from Matteo's shoulder. Hannah's cheek pressed against his chest. His heartbeat was steady. Too steady. "Are you hit?" she gasped. "No." "Are you lying?" "Yes." Her hands flew to his side. Warmth soaked his white shirt beneath the black jacket. Panic split her open. "Matteo." His hand caught hers. "Look at me. Don't you dare tell me you're fine." His mouth curved faintly, impossibly. "You're yelling. That means you're alive." She wanted to slap him. She wanted to hold him. His men dragged them inside through smoke and chaos. The gala became a storm of emergency lights, screaming guests, and camera flashes. Matteo stayed upright until the elevator doors closed. Then he dropped to one knee. Hannah caught his face between her hands. For a moment, the most feared man in Boston knelt before a plus-sized diner cook in a blood-stained gala dress, and every man in the elevator looked away as if witnessing something too intimate for violence. "Stay with me," she whispered. Matteo's eyes locked on hers. "I have been," he said. The safe house was not luxurious. That surprised her. It was a small brick building near the harbor, hidden behind an old church with boarded windows and a rusted iron gate. Inside, there were medical supplies, old furniture, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of dust and coffee. A doctor stitched Matteo beneath harsh yellow light while Hannah stood beside him. Arms crossed so tightly her nails bit into her skin. He refused anesthesia. Of course he did. Hannah watched the needle move through his skin until anger became easier than fear. "You're an idiot." Matteo's eyes flicked to her. The doctor wisely said nothing. "You stood in front of me," she continued. "Again." "Yes. We talked about this." "We did." "And your conclusion was?" "That I am bad at obeying you when bullets are involved." The doctor coughed. Hannah glared at him too. After the doctor left, Matteo sat shirtless on the edge of a narrow bed, bandages wrapped around his ribs, the hard lines of his body marked by old scars and newer debts. Hannah stood across from him with a bowl of water and a clean cloth. Neither of them moved. Finally, he said, "You don't have to." "I know." She stepped between his knees and cleaned the dried blood from his shoulder. His breath changed. "Not much." "Enough." She focused on the cloth, on the water, on anything but the heat of him beneath her fingers. "You scared me," she said. "I scared myself." Her hand paused. Matteo looked up at her. The safe house was quiet except for the wind pressing against the walls. "When that shot came through the glass," he said, "I did not think about Caruso, or the ledger, or the war it would start." "What did you think about?" His chaza held hers. "That I had not heard you laugh enough." The cloth stilled against his skin. Hannah wanted to look away, but she could not. "Matteo, I know." His voice roughened. "Too much." "No." Her throat tightened. "Too honest." He closed his eyes. She touched the edge of his bandage. "Not necessary. Not medical." His hand rose, slowly, giving her time to move away. When she did not, he rested his fingers lightly against her waist. Barely a touch. The tenderness of his restraint nearly undid her. Then his phone rang. The moment shattered. Matteo answered, eyes still on Hannah. His expression went empty. He stood too fast, winced, and turned away. "What?" Hannah asked. He did not answer at first. Then he said, "Caruso has your mother." The room went silent. He sent proof. Hannah's knees weakened. Matteo reached for her, then stopped himself. She hated that she noticed. Hated that she wanted him not to stop. "Show me," she said. On the phone was a video. A woman sat in a chair in a candlelit room. Older than the photograph. Thinner, but with Hannah's eyes. Her hands were tied. A bruise shadowed her cheek. She looked at the camera and tried to smile. "Hannah." the woman said softly. If you see this, do not give him what he wants. Hannah's hand covered her mouth. The woman looked past the camera, fear flickering. Then she whispered, Your father hid the truth where he first fed the boy. The video ended. Hannah looked at Matteo. His face had changed. Where he first fed the boy. The diner, she said. Matteo nodded slowly. The kitchen. No, Hannah whispered. The soup. Her father had hidden Matteo in the diner kitchen and fed him soup. Hannah ran to the recipe box, hands shaking as she pulled out every soup recipe. Tomato basil, chicken noodle, clam chowder, beef barley. There, on the back of the clam chowder card, written faintly beneath a stain, were numbers. Matteo read them once. Coordinates. To what? His eyes lifted. Bel 19. The warehouse. Caruso had never needed the recipe box alone. He needed Hannah to read it. The realization settled between them like a trap snapping shut. He wanted me to find it, Hannah said. Yes. So if we go there, he'll be waiting. She stared at her mother's frozen image on the phone. Then we don't go like he expects. Matteo's eyes narrowed. What are you thinking? Hannah took a breath. My father built his codes around diner recipes because he knew no one looked at the cook. She looked up. So let's make them ignore me one more time. Matteo hated the plan. That was how Hannah knew it might work. By dusk, Boston Harbor was swallowed in fog. Snow fell in wet, heavy sheets. Bell 19 stood at the edge of the water, its broken windows glowing faintly with candlelight inside. Caruso's men guarded the main entrance. Matteo's people surrounded the blocks beyond. But Hannah did not arrive in a black SUV. She arrived in a delivery van with 3 catering trays. Wearing her old diner coat, hair tucked under a knit hat, a guard looked into the van. Food? Chowder, she said, Boston, flat and irritated. For the men who keep ordering it and not tipping. The guard barely looked at her. That old familiar insult almost made her smile. He waved her through. Inside the warehouse, the air smelled like salt, rust, and old wood. Men stood around oil drums burning low. Hannah carried the trays past them. Heart steady only because fear had become too large to feel all at once. At the far end, beneath a hanging light, her mother sat tied to a chair. Alive. Hannah nearly dropped the tray. Her mother's eyes found hers. Recognition hit like a physical force. Not memory. Blood. Hannah kept walking. A hand caught her arm. Vincent Caruso emerged from the shadows. Miss Miller, he said, you disappoint me. I expected Russo. Hannah looked at his hand on her sleeve. Then at his face. Men like you always do. Caruso smiled. Where is the ledger? Hannah lifted the tray. In the chowder. His smile faded. Behind him, the far wall exploded inward. Not with fire. With light. Headlights blasted through the fog as Matteo's SUVs tore into the warehouse from the harbor side, smashing through old loading doors. Men scattered. Shouts erupted. Caruso cursed and grabbed Hannah, pulling her back against him. Matteo stepped out of the lead SUV into snow and smoke. He was injured, pale, and terrifying. For the first time since she had known him, his control looked thin enough to break. Caruso pressed something sharp against Hannah's side. Matteo stopped. The entire warehouse froze. Hannah's mother cried out, No. Caruso smiled against Hannah's ear. There it is. The line. Matteo's eyes were locked on Hannah's face. Not the weapon. Not Caruso. Here. Let her go, he said. Caruso laughed. And if I don't? Matteo's voice lowered. Then I become what everyone already thinks I am. Hannah saw it then, the edge. The place inside him where devotion and destruction touched. And she understood that Caruso wanted Matteo to cross it. Wanted him to become the monster in public. Wanted the ledger, the charter, the war. All of it buried beneath one bloody headline. So Hannah did the only thing no one expected. She stopped being afraid of taking up space. She drove her elbow back into Caruso's ribs, hard, turned into him, and dumped boiling chowder down the front of his coat. Caruso screamed and stumbled. Matteo moved. The warehouse erupted. Hannah ran to her mother. Around them, men collided in the fog, shadows and shouts, and the slam of bodies against wood. Matteo reached Caruso before he could recover, driving him into a table hard enough to break it in half. Hannah untied her mother's hands. Mom? The word came out childlike, broken. Her mother touched her face. My beautiful girl. Hannah almost fell apart, but there was no time. Across the warehouse, Caruso laughed from the floor, blood at his lip, eyes bright with malice. You think saving them saves you? He spat at Matteo. The ledger is already copied. The charter belongs to whoever holds the original blood claim. Hannah's mother turned pale. Matteo looked at Hannah. Caruso smiled. She doesn't know that part either? Hannah's breath caught. Know what? Her mother gripped her hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. Caruso's voice rang through the warehouse. Hannah Valenti is not just an heir. She is the heir. Her signature can give the harbor to Russo. To me. To anyone smart enough to marry her. Before sunrise. The words struck like ice water. The fake engagement. The public appearance. The way everyone had reacted. Hannah looked at Matteo. Pain flashed across his face. No, he said. But she had already stepped back. Is that why? She asked. No. Is that why you announced me as your fiancé? To protect you. And if marrying me gave you the harbor? I would burn the harbor first. Caruso laughed. Pretty words from a man who built an empire on ownership. Matteo turned on him, but Hannah spoke first. Stop. Everyone did. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. She walked toward Caruso, past Matteo, past men who suddenly understood that the woman they had ignored was the center of the room. My whole life, Hannah said. Men like you mistook quiet for permission. Caruso glared up at her. You looked at my father and saw an employee. You looked at my mother and saw a claim. You looked at me and saw a signature. She knelt beside him, close enough that he could hear every word. You should have looked at the cook. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out the real ledger. Not paper. A small, grease-stained notebook wrapped in plastic. Her father had hidden it inside the false bottom of the chowder tray. Caruso's face changed. Hannah stood and handed it to Matteo. Then she pulled it back before he could take it. His eyes met hers. No more secrets, she said. No more, he promised. She believed him. Not because love made her foolish. Because his voice broke when he said it. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Not local police. Federal. Matteo's contacts. Her father's evidence. Years of corruption. Finally dragged into the light. Caruso lunged once, desperate. Matteo caught him and slammed him down, but he did not finish it. He looked at Hannah. Waited. That was the moment everything changed. The most feared man in Boston had violence in his hands and asked her, without words, what kind of man she needed him to be. Hannah looked at Caruso, then at her mother, then at the broken warehouse where her father's ghost seemed to stand in every patch of falling snow. Let him live long enough to watch himself lose, she said. Matteo stepped back. Caruso looked more horrified by mercy than he had by violence. 3 weeks later, Miller's Diner reopened. The front windows were new. The floor had been repaired. The old neon sign still buzzed, because Hannah refused to replace it. Some things deserved to survive imperfectly. Reporters camped outside for 2 days, then found newer scandals. Caruso's empire cracked open under federal investigation. Judges resigned. Bankers fled. Men who had once laughed in private rooms suddenly discovered public fear. Hannah's mother, Elena, moved into a small apartment above the diner. They did not heal all at once. No one did. Some mornings they sat in the kitchen and cried over coffee. Some nights Hannah asked questions Elena was not ready to answer. Sometimes Elena touched Hannah's cheek like she was memorizing the woman her daughter had become without her. Matteo stayed away for 9 days. Not because he had vanished, because Hannah had asked for space. And for once, the Mafia Boss obeyed. His men no longer watched from across the street. His cameras were gone. The penthouse files had been delivered to Hannah in sealed boxes. Every copy, every record, every piece of control disguised as protection. On the 10th night, Boston snow returned. Hannah was closing the diner alone when she saw the black SUV parked across the street. Her heart knew before her mind admitted it. Matteo stood beneath the streetlight in a black coat, snow gathering on his shoulders. He did not cross, did not knock, did not send a man inside. He waited. Hannah watched him through the glass. For the first time, his waiting did not feel like surveillance. It felt like surrender. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside. The cold hit her face. Snow fell between them, soft and silver. Matteo straightened. Diner's closed, she said. I know. You waiting for breakfast? His eyes moved over her face with the quiet hunger of a man who had learned patience the hard way. No. What then? He looked down for a moment. The great Matteo Russo, feared by everyone from Boston Harbor to Beacon Hill. looked at the snow near her shoes like it might give him courage. Then he lowered himself to one knee. Hannah's breath caught. Across the street, his men stood frozen beside the SUV, visibly horrified. Matteo held up no ring. Only the old diner key. Her father's key. "I have spent most of my life taking rooms before anyone could lock me out," he said. "Taking streets before enemies could own them. Taking power because being powerless almost killed me." His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. "Then I met you. And you made me understand that protection without trust is just another kind of violence." Hannah's throat tightened. Snow clung to his hair. His black coat brushed the white ground. He looked impossible there. Dangerous, elegant, wounded, kneeling in front of a woman the world had spent years ignoring. "I do not ask to own your life," he said. "I do not ask to stand in front of you unless you tell me to." He held out the key. "I am asking if you will let me stand beside you." Hannah stared at him. Every lonely night she had spent in the diner, every insult swallowed, every bill paid late, every time someone's eyes slid past her as if she were not the kind of woman men cross cities for, all of it rose inside her. And then faded, because Matteo Russo was on his knees in the snow, and he was not making her smaller. He was meeting her where she stood. Hannah took the key. His eyes closed for half a second, like mercy had touched him. She stepped closer. "You still scare me," she whispered. "I know. I still don't like being ordered around. I know. And if you ever put cameras on me again, I'll poison your coffee." His mouth curved. "Understood." She looked down at him, snow melting on her lashes. "Get up, Matteo." He rose slowly. For a moment they stood close enough for the space between them to become unbearable. This time, when he lifted his hand toward her face, he did not stop. And this time, Hannah did not want him to. His fingers brushed snow from her cheek with a gentleness so careful it hurt. She leaned into it. The black SUVs waited in the distance. The city moved around them. Somewhere inside the diner, coffee burned on the warmer, and the neon sign buzzed like a stubborn little heartbeat. Matteo lowered his forehead to hers. "I don't know how to be soft," he whispered. Hannah closed her eyes. "You don't have to be soft for the world." His breath trembled. "Just honest with me." He nodded once. "A promise. Not dramatic. Not polished. Not safe. Earned." Hannah unlocked the diner and let him in. Inside, she made her father's breakfast. Eggs over easy, burnt toast, hash browns with extra black pepper, coffee with 1 sugar stirred 7 times. Matteo sat at the counter, not in the back booth, not hiding, not watching from a distance. When she set the plate in front of him, his hand covered hers for one brief, warm second. Outside, snow covered Boston until every scar looked clean. Inside, the Mafia Boss took one bite of the meal that had once saved his life, looked at the woman who had become his line, and finally understood that devotion was not possession. It was choosing to stay. Even when the door was open,